There's this incredibly romanticized idea in the business world today, and honestly, just in creative fields in general.
Ah, for sure. The whole lone genius myth.
Exactly. It's this image of someone toiling away in their garage or like
Yeah.
a chef obsessively perfecting a recipe in some hidden test kitchen.
Yeah, and the underlying belief is always the exact same.
Right. It's this assumption that if you just make the absolute best thing you know, the perfect app, the ultimate newsletter, the most revolutionary gadget, the world is just magically going to discover it.
Like they'll just naturally beat a path to your door. The whole if you build it, they will come philosophy.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, it makes for a fantastic movie script. But the problem is, it almost never happens that way in the real world.
And that is exactly what we are dismantling today in this deep dive. We are looking at the actual measurable science of getting customers.
It's so important.
It really is. And we're drawing this from the first 3 chapters of a book called Traction, a startup guide to getting customers. It's by Gabriel Weinberg, who actually founded the search engine DuckDuckGo, and Justin Mares.
It is just a phenomenal look at the hidden mechanics of growth. Because, the harsh reality is that the business graveyard is absolutely packed with technologically superior products.
Products that just completely failed.
Exactly. Failed simply because nobody knew they existed. Meanwhile, I mean, we've all seen these wildly mediocre products completely dominate their industry.
Oh, totally. We see it every day. So
Yeah.
whether you are trying to launch a tech startup, starting a side hustle, or you're just insanely curious about why certain ideas go viral while others just disappear into the void,
Yeah.
this deep dive is going to give you the shortcut to understanding audience growth.
It's the blueprint, really.
Right. But before we get into the tactical side of, acquiring users, we really have to talk about the trap most creators fall into before they even launch.
Yeah, the authors call it the product trap. And it's this fundamental, incredibly widespread fallacy that the absolute best use of your time is always, without fail, improving your product.
Like, you just can't stop tinkering with it.
Exactly. Founders get stuck in this loop. They build a prototype, they tweak it based on a tiny bit of early feedback. They add like 5 more features, they polish the design.
And suddenly it's been 6 months.
Right. They end up spending 100% of their waking hours on the product itself.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Because focusing only on the product is, well, it's like building a 5-star luxury restaurant in the middle of a desert without pouring any concrete for roads to get there.
That is the perfect analogy.
You can have the best tasting menu on earth, but if nobody can actually drive to your front door, you're going bankrupt.
Yeah, that visual disconnect is exactly what kills early companies. So to fix this, Weinberg and Mares introduce what they call the 50% rule.
Okay, what's the breakdown there?
It's pretty strict. The rule states that 50% of your time should go to product development, and the other 50% has to go to traction.
Half and half.
Half and half. And the crucial mechanism here is that you have to do them in parallel.
Right.
Right from day one. You do not build first and market second.
Right, because if you wait, it's already too late.
Exactly. I mean, Mark Andreessen, one of the most successful venture capitalists out there, he routinely points out that a lack of a distribution strategy is the #1 reason his firm passes on entrepreneurs.
Wow, the #1 reason.
Yeah. They don't pass because of bad code. They pass because the founders have literally no plan to get that code in front of actual humans.
But hold on, let me push back on that for a second.
Mhm.
If I'm building, say, a really complex tech product or writing a heavily researched book, pulling half my time away to write blog posts or, figure out Facebook ads, it feels like a massive distraction.
It feels counterintuitive, yeah.
Right. Doesn't that actively hurt the quality of what I'm making? I mean, look at Apple. The mythology there is that they build these perfect products in absolute secrecy, and then they drop them on the world, and millions of people line up.
Why shouldn't a startup do that?
Well, Apple is actually the perfect example of why startups can't do that.
Why not?
Because Apple already possesses a multi-billion-dollar distribution network that they built over decades. They have physical stores in every major city, a massive email list, and immediate global press attention the second they send out a vague invite.
Right. They already have the roads built to the restaurant.
Exactly. A startup has zero distribution. If we connect this to the bigger picture, working on traction in parallel with product development actually saves the product from being useless.
Wait, how does dividing your focus actually save the product?
Because your traction efforts feed critical real-world data right back into the development cycle.
Okay, I see. Let's look at Dropbox. Early on, while they were literally still coding the core product, they decided to test a traction channel. They chose search engine marketing, just buying Google ads based on keywords.
Sounds like a standard playbook. People search for cloud storage, you buy the ad, they click.
On the surface, yeah. But when they ran the test, the data came back showing it was costing them $230 to acquire a single paying customer.
Wait, $230?
Yeah, that was their customer acquisition cost, or CAC. The problem was their product was only priced at $99.
Oh, wow. So they were losing, what, $131 on every single person who signed up?
Exactly.
That means the more successful their marketing campaign was, the faster they would actually go out of business.
Which is a terrifying realization for a founder, but because they ran that test early in parallel with Build and Groom, they realized they couldn't rely on traditional advertising. The math simply didn't work for their business model.
So what did they do?
That early failure forced them to pivot. They built a viral referral program directly into the core code of the product itself.
Oh, like the whole invite a friend, get more free storage mechanic.
That's the one. And that became their biggest growth engine. If they had waited until the product was completely finished to start thinking about marketing, they would have wasted months of runway on a strategy that was fundamentally broken.
That really reframes the whole concept. You're effectively beta testing your distribution channels at the exact same time you beta test your software features.
That's exactly it.
But, Dropbox already had a working prototype when they did that. Is there a way to test traction before you even write a single line of code, just to, save yourself the headache if nobody actually wants what you're building?
Oh, absolutely. The marketing automation company, Marketo, did exactly that.
Really? How?
Well, before their software even existed, the founders started a blog to talk about the specific problems they eventually aimed to solve. They just built an audience first.
That's smart.
And they integrated all the comments and feedback from their readers directly into the product roadmap. So by the time they actually launched the software, they weren't launching to crickets. They had a pipeline of 14,000 interested buyers just waiting to hand them money.
14,000 buyers on day one, and without a product to show for months prior.
Yeah, that is the tactical power of the 50% rule.
So, okay, we know we have to dedicate half our time to getting traction, but let's establish what we actually mean by that word, because traction, it gets thrown around constantly in business jargon. What are we actually chasing here?
At its core, traction is quantitative evidence of customer demand. It is the undeniable numerical proof that your idea is actually taking off.
Okay, so it's all about the numbers.
Right. Paul Graham, he's the founder of the Y Combinator startup accelerator. He has a very blunt definition. He just says traction is growth. The pursuit of that growth curve is literally the defining characteristic of a startup.
And according to the authors, there isn't just one magic bullet to get that growth right. They identified 19 distinct traction channels.
19 entirely different avenues, yes.
That's a lot of options.
It is, and they cover everything from the traditional ones everyone knows, like public relations, search engine optimization, B2B enterprise sales, to much more niche avenues like affiliate programs, trade shows, and unconventional PR.
Unconventional PR.
Usually that involves staging viral publicity stunts.
Got it. One of the channels that really stood out to me was engineering as marketing.
Oh, that's a powerful one, especially for software companies. It's when you use your developers to build free, standalone tools specifically designed to attract leads.
Like HubSpot, building their free marketing grader tool.
Exactly.
Because it's not their main super expensive software suite, but anyone can go to their site, plug in their website URL, and just get a free report on their SEO.
Right. It provides immediate value.
But more importantly for HubSpot, it pulls in thousands of high-intent potential customers who are clearly already thinking about marketing software.
It's a brilliant lead magnet. But, having 19 distinct channels creates a massive psychological hurdle for founders.
Oh, I can imagine. 19 channels sounds like massive menu anxiety at a giant diner.
Yeah, and the authors actually discovered two major themes in their research regarding this. First, founders have huge biases. They naturally default to the channels they already understand.
So a software engineer might lean heavily into engineering as marketing or SEO.
Exactly. But they'll completely dismiss offline billboard ads or public speaking engagements just because it's outside their comfort zone.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the second theme the authors found is that it is absolutely impossible to predict which of these 19 channels is going to be the explosive winner for your specific business.
It is entirely unpredictable.
So if we have 19 options and we can't predict what works, the instinct is to just play roulette, right?
Yeah.
You place a chip on every single number on the board, you run a few Google ads, you write a couple of Medium posts, you go to one local trade show, start a podcast just praying something hits.
And if you play roulette like that, the house always
It's
wins.
just too scattered.
Spreading your resources that thin guarantees failure across the board.
Hmm.
You don't get enough data to know if a channel is actually viable or if you just executed it poorly because you only spent an hour on it.
That makes sense.
The goal is to find the one channel that your competitors are completely dismissing and just dominate it. So to solve that paralysis of choice without playing roulette, the authors created a highly systematic scientific approach. They call it the Bullseye framework.
I love frameworks that take the emotion out of decision-making. It's like the scientific method for marketing. So if I'm a founder and I'm sitting in front of a giant spreadsheet with 19 empty rows, how do I actually narrow this down systematically?
So the Bullseye framework operates as a funnel through 5 distinct steps. Step 1 is brainstorming.
Okay.
This is how you actively combat your personal biases. You force yourself to come up with at least one reasonable, actionable idea for every single one of the 19 channels.
Wait, every single one. So even if I'm building a highly technical SaaS product, I still have to brainstorm what an offline physical billboard ad or a direct mail campaign would look like.
Yes. You have to give every channel a fair shake. You put them all on the board.
Okay, got it.
Then, once you have that massive list, step 2 is to rank them. You organize these brainstormed ideas into 3 columns, visualizing a target. Column A is your inner circle. These are the channels that seem the most incredibly promising right now.
Okay.
Column B is potential ideas that could plausibly work but lack immediate evidence. And column C is the long shot that's the outer ring of the target.
Okay, so I've sorted the menu into tiers. But I still don't have the time or the money to test all the promising ones in my inner circle. How do I ruthlessly cut this down?
That is step 3. Prioritize. You look at your inner circle, column A, and you cull it down to exactly 3 channels, no more, no less.
Well, I have exactly 3.
You want multiple channels so you can test them in parallel and save time, but not so many that you lose focus and end up playing roulette again.
Which brings us to the most critical part, the test phase. Let's say one of my 3 chosen channels is Facebook ads, and I really truly believe in it. During this testing phase, how do I resist the urge to just dump my entire marketing budget into it and try to get 1 million users right away?
Well, you have to fundamentally separate testing from scaling. The goal of the test phase is not massive traction. The goal is buying data.
Just buying data.
Right. You want to answer 3 specific questions. How much will it cost to acquire a customer? How many total customers are realistically available through this channel? And are they actually the right kind of customers who will stick around?
So I'm not running a massive campaign yet.
Exactly. You don't run 40 Facebook ads. You run 4. You cap your spend at a few $100s. You are just trying to see if your spreadsheet assumptions hold water in the real world.
And if the data from one of those cheap micro-experiments comes back incredibly positive,
then you move to the final step, which is focus. You drop all the other tests, you ignore the other 18 channels, and you direct every single resource, every dollar and every ounce of energy you have into that one winning channel to wring every last drop of traction out of it.
just go all in.
Yeah. Peter Thiel, the billionaire founder of PayPal, had a quote in the text that perfectly encapsulates why this focus is mandatory. He noted that poor distribution is the #1 cause of failure. But more importantly, if you try for several channels and don't nail a single one, you're finished.
You don't need to be good at everything.
Exactly. You do not need to be good at marketing across the board. You just need one channel to work perfectly to build a massive business.
I think to really grasp the mechanics of this, we need to look at how a company actually executed this funnel in the real world. The sources provided this incredible case study of the Bullseye framework using a personal finance app called Mint.
Oh, Mint is a legendary startup story. They were eventually acquired by Intuit for $170 million.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. But back at the very beginning, their director of marketing, Noah Kagan, was given a massive, seemingly impossible goal: get 100,000 users in the first 6 months.
Wow, that is aggressive.
Very. So they ran the Bullseye framework to figure out how to pull that off. They brainstormed, ranked, and prioritized their inner circle down to 3 channels, targeting blogs, public relations, and search engine marketing.
Okay, so 3 distinct lanes.
Right. Then they ran cheap, data-driven tests, and the spreadsheet data from those tests is just incredibly revealing about human behavior.
The numbers completely upended their assumptions, didn't they?
Oh, totally.
Let's look at the actual data because this really blew my mind. So what does this all mean? They tested a massive mainstream tech site called Mashable. And at the time, Mashable was getting 500,000 visitors in traffic.
Huge audience.
Right. You'd think a placement there would be a golden ticket to 100,000 users. But the spreadsheet shows it yielded exactly 0 confirmed users for Mint. Meanwhile, they tested personal finance sponsorships, which just meant buying banner ads and doing guest posts on much smaller niche finance blogs that only had about 200,000 in traffic. But the smaller blogs had a 65% conversion rate and yielded 52,000 confirmed users.
It's wild.
Why would a site with more than double the traffic yield literally 0 results?
Well, what's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism of user intent. Mashable is a broad entertainment site. People go there to look at cool new gadgets or read tech gossip. They're in a passive consumption mindset.
They aren't there to do work.
Right. But niche personal finance blogs, however, attract a very specific demographic. People who are actively stressed about their budgets and are actively searching for a solution. It is a high-intent audience.
That has perfect sense.
It proves why you have to run cheap tests rather than just assuming big brand names and raw traffic metrics automatically equal big traction. It's all about matching the channel to the user's intent.
And they also tested Reddit during that phase, getting, 6,250 users at a stunning 100% click-through rate. Because of the hard data from these tests, Mint wasn't guessing anymore.
No, they had the proof.
They moved right to the focus phase. They dropped Mashable, they dropped standard PR, and they poured all their energy into targeting niche finance blogs. They sponsored mid-level bloggers, gave them early beta access, and that laser focus got them their first 40,000 customers.
But they couldn't stop there.
Why not?
Because of a concept called saturation. Every single traction channel has a mathematical lifespan. Eventually, you will run out of mid-level finance blogs to sponsor. You will literally reach every single person who reads them.
Right, the well runs dry.
Exactly. The channel dries up and your customer acquisition costs start to skyrocket because you're fighting for the few remaining scraps.
So when Mint hit that ceiling at 40,000 users, they just accepted that the channel was tapped out and ran the Bullseye process all over again.
They did.
They tested new channels, found that traditional public relations was suddenly their new winner, probably because they now had enough credibility for major news outlets to care, and they focused entirely on PR. And that second phase is what propelled them to 1 million users.
It perfectly illustrates that startup growth is almost never a smooth, continuous upward line. It happens in distinct, jagged spurts. The specific channel that gets you your first 1,000 users is almost never the channel that gets you to 10,000.
And what gets you to 40,000 sure won't get you to 1 million.
Nope. You have to constantly be monitoring your data, ready to run a brand new Bullseye test when the old channel saturates.
And understanding the growth happens in these distinct phases brings us to a really critical transition point in this deep dive. Because, knowing how to systematically find a channel is only half the battle.
The other half is timing.
Exactly. Knowing exactly when to pour money into that channel and when to hold your budget back.
The sources break down the life cycle of a product into 3 phases to help with this timing. Phase 1 is making something people actually want. Phase 2 is marketing something people want. And Phase 3 is scaling the business.
Okay, so in Phase 1, when you are just starting out, you are essentially hunting for those very first sparks of initial traction. Paul Graham has this really famous piece of advice for this exact stage. Do things that don't scale.
Yes, such a great principle.
You can't just launch a landing page and wait for the algorithm to bless you. You have to manually recruit users. You have to email your personal network, attend local meetups, shake hands, write highly personalized cold emails. Small, totally unscalable actions move the needle early on.
But the existential danger for founders is trying to jump straight from that into Phase 3 and scale too quickly.
Skipping Phase 2 entirely.
Right. The authors use a brilliant visual analogy for this. The leaky bucket. If you are in Phase 1, your product is essentially a bucket full of holes. It's a prototype. It's not perfect yet. It has software bugs, the user interface is confusing, and it doesn't solve the customer's problem perfectly.
So if your product is a bucket full of holes, deciding to suddenly dump thousands of dollars into Facebook ads to acquire users is like, buying a high-pressure fire hose to fill a bucket that has no bottom?
Precisely. You don't get a full bucket. You just create a massive, incredibly expensive mud puddle.
Because the users click the ad, they sign up, they immediately realize the product is buggy or unhelpful, and they leave forever.
They leak right out. It is a complete and total waste of resources.
That is why defining product market fit in Phase 2 is so critical. But how do we actually define that? What does product market fit look like in the real world?
Well, product market fit is achieved when the leaks are plugged. And you measure that through retention and engagement metrics. It's not about how many people visit your site. It's about how many people come back a second, third, and fourth time.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. When your existing users are actually sticking around and actively engaging with the product, that is when you start scaling up your budget. You turn on the fire hose only when the bucket can hold the water.
And a plugged bucket is exactly what venture capitalists are looking for when you go to raise money.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources actually quote Naval Ravikant. He's the founder of AngelList on this exact dynamic.
Yeah, he points out that the raw number of users required to get funding is a constantly moving target. You know, a decade ago, you could raise millions with just a decent pitch deck. Then the market shifted, and you needed 10,000 downloads to prove viability. Today, the bar is even higher.
But the core principle stays the same.
Right. The one universal truth that never changes is that investors look for sustainable product engagement. Even if your absolute numbers are tiny, say, you only have 100 highly engaged users, but that specific user base is growing steadily at 10% a month, and literally nobody is churning out. That is incredibly attractive.
Because it proves the concept works and the leaks are plugged.
Exactly.
But let's look at the dark side of this. What if you're stuck? Let's say you're running your Bullseye test, you're looking at your bucket, and the retention numbers just aren't moving. People sign up and they just leave.
Yeah.
How do you know if it's just a leaky bucket you need to spend a few more weeks patching? Or if you are fundamentally building something nobody wants and you just need to give up and pivot entirely?
This raises such an important question because giving up too early is just as fatal as stubbornly holding on to a dead idea for years.
Right.
The rule of thumb for deciding whether to pivot or persevere is to look incredibly closely at your user data for what they call bright spots.
Bright spot.
Yeah. Are there small, highly engaged pockets of users who absolutely love the product, even if the mainstream market totally ignores it?
So finding a core group of diehard fans hidden in the noise.
Yes. If you find a bright spot, it might mean your core idea isn't wrong, you're just early to the market. Look at Gabriel Weinberg's own company, DuckDuckGo.
Oh, the author's company.
Right. He founded the search engine with a strict focus on user privacy way back in 2008. For years, the growth curve was just flat and steady, nothing explosive. Most people simply didn't care about internet trackers yet.
It wasn't a mainstream conversation.
Exactly. But they had a bright spot. A small, intensely loyal community of tech-savvy users who cared deeply about not being tracked.
And then, 5 years later, the massive NSA surveillance leaks happened.
Right. Suddenly, in 2013, digital privacy went from being a fringe concern for hackers to a massive mainstream global conversation. Because DuckDuckGo had stuck with their bright spot and quietly refined their product for half a decade, they were perfectly positioned when the market finally caught up to their vision.
And their growth absolutely exploded.
It did. And this is the hard truth, if you look at your user base and there are absolutely zero bright spots. Like nobody is engaging, nobody is logging back in, nobody is even complaining when the site goes down, then it's time to swallow your pride and pivot.
That's a tough pill to swallow. So stepping back and looking at the architecture of all this, the traction framework is actually incredibly empowering. It removes the mystery of going viral and replaces it with a process.
It really does.
So to summarize the core insights for you. First, do not fall into the product trap. Your brilliant idea is not going to magically sell itself. You have to aggressively spend 50% of your time building the product and 50% of your time testing traction channels right from day one.
Second, do not rely on guesswork or play marketing roulette. Use the Bullseye framework. Force yourself to brainstorm across all 19 channels to beat your own biases.
Right. Rank them. Ruthlessly prioritize exactly 3, run cheap data-driven microtests to find your CAC, and then focus all your energy on the single winner until the channel naturally saturates.
And finally, beware the leaky bucket. Do not buy a fire hose to fill a bucket with no bottom. Wait until you have actual product market fit, where a core group of users sticks around before you pour money into scaling.
Because ultimately, whether you are trying to get subscribers for a newsletter, clients for a consulting gig, or launching the next tech empire, building a genuinely great product only grants you permission to step onto the field and play the game. Mastering distribution is how you actually win the championship.
Well said. And that leads to a really interesting question to consider as you go about your day.
I'd love to hear it.
Think about the products, the apps, or the services you rely on every single day. Did the genuinely, objectively best product win your loyalty and your money? Or did the product with the most ruthless, highly optimized, and scientifically tested distribution strategy win? The business graveyard is overflowing with better mousetraps that nobody ever bothered to market.
It is a sobering thought. And it brings us right back to that luxury restaurant in the desert. You can spend your entire life perfecting the menu, but if you don't spend half your time paving the road to the front door, you're going to be eating entirely alone.